Welcome to part 4 of the Diorama series that I'm calling Race to Toshi Station, where in the first parts 1, 2, and 3, we've gotten you to the point where we've started to make the geological features, the striations in the rocks, and we've also done this one. Now, if you recall, on this piece, this is ultimately the piece of with the Toshi Station building on it, and this is just a styrofoam base. Now, this is far from finished. We're going to detail this quite a bit, but right now we're still working on the rocks. And if you recall, I unfortunately I lost the footage to get us to this point. I don't know what happened to that film. So what we did was I went back in part 3, and we're going to do a companion piece to that. So we're gonna finish out this piece, and then by the end of the video, everything will all be ready for then part 5. So what we're going to do now is we need to take this. We're gonna. Oh, by the way, this is some of the land speeders. These are actually Micro Galaxy Squadron scaled. So this is a Hot Wheels land speeder, and Micro Galaxy Squadron figures fit in it. I'm going to show you how to modify this and use this as our. This is the perfect size for this type of diorama, and we're going to have the land speeders flying through the canyons and things. So we're going to put that off to the side, and now what we're going to do is I'm going to make a little bit of room here. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to focus on this one. This is the one where I made that sort of pass through, almost like from the Boonta Eve pod race. And this is what we're going to do now. Is we need to then coat all of this surface with a mixture of paint and glue and let that dry. And then from there, then we're going to start putting on the weathering powders and all of these things. So let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take this little bowl, and I'm going to take either, you have a choice. You can either use Mod Podge or you can use cheap glue. The choice is yours. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to save the Mod Podge for another project, and we're going to use this cheap glue that I bought at the dollar store for about $1. So we're going to put in, maybe, we don't need too much of it. It's not a huge diorama piece. So we're going to put in maybe, I don't know, maybe like a quarter of the bottle, something like that. It's cheap. So there's nothing that you really have to measure out on this one. And then I'm going to take this dollar store craft paint. This is a nice, it's 3 fluid ounces, dollar store, and it's just a base coat. It doesn't need to be anything fancy or special. It's just a base coat, and it's kind of the color of Tatooine. So as long as we can get it to the final product, it doesn't really matter. So we're gonna just put a little bit of this paint in there, and this actually has a metallic sheen to it, which again, it's not gonna matter because it's all gonna be completely covered by other layers. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix it up in the glue. Just make it nice, and the glue acts as a sealer, and then the paint acts as just sort of a tinge. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this mix, and then for this particular thing, you can either use a crappy old brush or you can use a foam brush or whatever you have. And the idea is to just seal the whole model on all sides. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start on the inside, and we're just going to start laying down a base coat of paint. Now, this is important. You want to make sure that every single, you don't want to have any unsealed parts to this, okay? You want to make sure that every single square inch of the model is going to be covered in this glue. And the reason why that is because there's other things that we're going to use. We're going to use spray sealants, and we're going to use some other things that actually interfere or interact with the foam base. So foam is very finicky. You have to be careful when you're using foam because things like aerosols can actually deteriorate and immediately eat away at the foam. So the glue or the Mod Podge seal it off completely, and then that becomes totally irrelevant. So that's what we're doing in this. So it does take a little while because you want to make sure you're getting every single nook and cranny, okay? But we're just going to do it together. I'm going to show you how to do it. And again, that sort of yellow craft paint, it kind of is going in the right direction color-wise for Tatooine, where we want to end up. So it's going to look okay. There is a a slight shine to it. You can say it's shite, absolutely. And we're just going to keep doing this. And the other thing is you want to make sure also, you want to get that live edge. So I'll spare you doing the live edge in its entirety for this video, but definitely get that live edge when you're doing this, okay? We're gonna focus on the top right now. And then really you can see too, like once you put that base coat on this, it really looks, it's starting to look like geological striations in the rock. Even just doing that one coat. And then, like I said, you're going to start to see how weathering powders and other things, it's going to start blending it all together until we get the ultimate finished product, which is this. But it's all in the first, you don't get those results if you start cutting corners. And so it's really important that you take your time in the initial steps, because the slightest little thing, mostly it's a forgiving process, but the materials that are used when you're using foam are sensitive. So you want to make sure that you're hedging your bets and making sure that every single part of this is covered, okay? And again, the base color doesn't really matter. This is more for the purpose of sealing it. And if you're interested, or if you are wondering how I made the paper mache, in my Geonosis series, I walk you through how to do a Geonosis landscape, and there's a whole section in that series on how to make this paper mache. But again, it's essentially 3 cups of hot water, 2 rolls of toilet paper, 2 bottles of glue, and about 5 pumps of dish soap. And then you take something like a hand blender or an immersion blender, or even just rip up the paper in the water. And then the most important thing is, after you have the paper torn up, and right before you put in all the other ingredients, you want to squeeze all the water out. Squeeze 95% of the water out of it, so you just have a pulp. All right, just like a toilet paper pulp. And then you add the other ingredients, the glue and the hand soap. You want to make sure that you have the vast majority of the water out of it, okay? And then once you do that, you mix it. I like to put on a pair of gloves and I mix it with my hands, almost like you're making a meatloaf mix. If you're familiar with that process, it's the same type of thing. You want to mix it all together. And with the paper mache, you don't want any clumps. Right? You want it to be the consistency of like biscuit dough. Like I said in the part 3, you're looking for almost like a biscuit dough consistency. And you don't want it to, in other words, you want it to be firm. You want it to hold its shape. And you don't want it to necessarily cover your hands in glue and paper. So it's a very stable paper mache. It dries hard as a rock. It's just awesome stuff. And that's kind of the consistency that you're looking for with the mache. And as you can see here, we're almost done with this process here. It does take a little while, but I want to show you guys exactly what is required for this. So this is the step that you cannot rush. You want to make sure that every surface is covered. Okay, so there's that. And then we're going to do that. Okay. And finally, here we are, we're almost at the end here. I'm gonna go and do the live edge off camera, but don't forget to do that live edge. And then from here, there's one other thing we're gonna do in this step while the glue is still nice and tacky, okay? It's tacky. It's not even necessarily wet, it's more tacky. And that's a good sign, all right? So now, what you wanna do now, this is really the fun part. In this series, I like to show you how to use things that you have in your house that are very inexpensive, so you don't have to go out and buy really expensive things. And we're gonna go raid my wife's, Mrs. Hyper's brand new kitchen, and I have stolen her spices. And I have ginger, I have smoked paprika, and I have garlic. And these are fantastic texturing elements. So in Tatooine, of course, you're going to have small rocks, you're going to have dust and dirt and all kinds of things. So I'm going to take some of this garlic, all right? And this garlic is, the granules are really perfect for this. They look just like rocks. I mean, you don't even have to really do anything to them. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of just spread them around here and there, all over the place, right? And what that does is those are going to lay down in this layer of glue and paint. And you're going to be, it's really amazing what it looks like when everything is all done. So I like to just kind of throw it here and there, make sure you get some on the outside, because some of those little nooks and crannies, they're going to hold some rocks now and then, right? So you're going to do that, right? Put them there, put a couple more around there, maybe a couple over here. I mean, you can put as many or as few as you want. And I like to make sure that there's sort of a lot over here, a little over there. Sometimes it's sparse in those locations, all right? So there's that. Then we're gonna take a little bit of this ginger here. And the ginger, again, this is just a ginger, very fine ginger powder. And that really looks like sand, right? I mean, right off the get-go, right? So we're gonna take some of this ginger, I'm gonna sprinkle it around. Now, this is important. You don't necessarily want the ginger over every single square inch of this. That's what gives it this appearance. If you notice on here, not everywhere is covered. Some of it's exposed rock, some of it's textured with moss and lichens and things. And that's how you do that. You actually, the negative spaces create the texture just as much as the texturing agents themselves. So we are just going to do that a little bit. And before you know it, there's that. Now finally, what you're going to do is you're going to take your paint one more time, our paint here like we had before, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap all of this in. So I'm going to take it, we start in an area, I'm just going to tap it, tap all of those elements right into it. You want to lock them down, okay? This is about locking down all those ingredients and those rocky things. And what that's going to do is going to harden, and just, you'll never be able to, they're not going to come off, they're not going to flake off when the diorama is complete. And you're going to be very satisfied with the impervious nature of that. So I will spare you this is already a long enough video, but you get the idea. You're going to want to lock all these ingredients in, all right? Now, in the next part, we're going to seal it off again. We're going to actually start weathering and putting some different actual first layers of paint on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some paint, grab yourself some black paint, some white paint, some yellow paint, red paint, and we'll come up with a really nice sort of base layer. And then we'll start weathering it and start, believe it or not, it's going to come together really quickly. And we're going to also, of course, do this one. And we're going to start building the actual Toshi station. So thank you so much for looking. Stay tuned for part 5. Looking forward to sharing it with you. And let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.